Good day. In this particular video, we will be discussing complex word problems in relation to distance, speed and time. In our previous videos, we did an introduction on distance, speed and time, and we did some word problem solving. This particular video will focus on how to dissect a word problem and what it is you need to be looking for when you look at a more complex word problem. So let's get straight into it. Mr. Ravi took 4 hours to drive from town P to town Q at an average speed of 75 kilometers. On his way back, he drove at an average speed of 60 kilometers per hour. How long did he take to drive back from town P to town Q? Now, what is important here is you will see that I underlined the words that are of importance to us. So the first thing we're going to do is go straight into our steps to success. The first step to success is that we need to identify the keywords. The reason is that we start with identifying the keywords so that we know exactly what it is that we need to be doing. What does the word tell us to do? What does the question tell us we have? And where do we need to be going from there? So the first thing I did was I underlined 4 hours because that is the time that it took. Now before I get straight into that, I want to actually combine step 1 and step 2 because they go hand in hand. So step 1 is to identify our keywords and step 2 is to make a checklist. The reason you're going to make a checklist is so that you know if you are talking about one journey, if you're talking about one part of the journey, are you talking about the beginning or the ending of the journey? Is your journey divided into different portions? This makes it much easier for you then to know what it is you're looking for and what else you need to do thereafter. So you will see here that I started off by saying that we have the starting journey and we have the ending journey. The reason I said the starting journey and the ending journey is because the starting journey is his journey going from town P to town Q. So in the beginning, when he went there, he traveled from town P all the way to town Q. So that is the starting journey. When he came back, that is what we refer to as the ending journey. The ending journey is when he traveled from town Q back to town P. Now, we do that so that we know how to break up our word problem and we can then identify what portions of the word problem we need to look for. So I started off by saying that 4 hours is a keyword or keywords. So 4 hours goes into my time portion for the starting journey. And then they continue to tell us that he traveled at an average speed of 75 kilometers per hour. So that is also in the starting journey. So when he drove for 4 hours, he drove at a speed of 75 kilometers. The word problem then continued to tell us that when he came back, when he returned, he drove at an average speed of 60 kilometers per hour. So I put that in my checklist. And this is him traveling at 60 kilometers per hour from town Q all the way back to town P. The question then says, how long did he take to drive? So the words how long refer to time. Whenever you see the words how long, we are talking about time. So how long did he take to drive back from town Q to town P? So what I've done is I've put all of my information into my checklist. I've divided my checklist into starting journey and ending journey. Now the first thing we're going to do is look at exactly what we have in our formula. In both my starting and ending journeys, I don't have values for distance. So that means before I can look for my time, I need to know what my distance is. The distance is going to remain the same for both the starting and ending journey because he is traveling from one place to another place and is traveling from exactly the same place and back home. So we need to be looking for the distance before we can get to the time. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to put down my magic triangle here. And my magic triangle is going to assist me with knowing exactly which formula I need to use. So by me putting down my magic triangle, it assists me with knowing what I'm looking for and how to use my formula. So I'm looking for my distance. So distance is at the top and I'm left with speed and time at the bottom. Whenever the two at the bottom are left alone, we multiply them. So we put down our formula. So I'm saying first journey. So it's the starting out. By us doing more than one type of calculation, it helps us to move from what we know into what we are looking for. I cannot use my ending journey because I only have one portion of the puzzle. I only have one piece of the puzzle and I need 3 pieces for the puzzle to fit. I'm better able to use my starting journey because I have 2 pieces of the puzzle and I only need to be looking for one other piece. So it makes it easier for me to be starting with this particular portion of the journey instead of the second half. Now our distance formula is distance is equal to speed times time, and that is 75 times 4. If you are not sure what is 75 times 4, on the side of your page you are going to do the calculation. 75 times 4, that gives us 4 times 5 is 20, carry the 2. 4 times 7 is 28 plus 2 is 30. So that gives us 300 kilometers. How do you know that we're working with kilometers? Because the unit that the speed was given to us gives us a hint about what the unit of measurement is for the distance, and that is kilometers. Now that I know what my distance is here, my distance will then be exactly the same for the ending portion of the journey. That means I have now 2 pieces of the puzzle and I only need to be finding the last portion. So for the second part of the journey, it will then be that I'm looking for time. And my formula for time, if you look at your magic triangle, I don't have time, so that leaves me with distance and speed. When we have distance and speed, distance is divided by speed. So it is d over s. Or you could have written it as a long sum, so distance divided by speed. They mean exactly the same thing. I just prefer to work with it in fraction form because it always is a little bit easier working with fractions. So we have my distance is 300 kilometers and my speed is 60 kilometers per hour. Now, if you are not sure how to divide this straight off, you are going to do the calculation on the side of your page. Remember, the number at the bottom goes on the outside and the number at the top goes on the inside. 60 cannot go into 3. It can't go into 30. So we see how many times can it go into 300, excuse me. So if you are still not sure and you find it a little bit tough to count in sixes, you do the calculation on the side again. So you say 60 times 4, that's 0, and that is 24. And then we see if we can go another time. That gives us 300, so it is 5 times. So 300 divided by 60 gives us a total of 5 hours. And that is our time, and we are done with our calculation. Okay, so another such example is a motorist traveled on an expressway for 2 hours at 80 kilometers per hour. He then traveled for another 3 hours at 70 kilometers per hour. Find his average speed for the whole journey. Now, the information that we have, I've divided my information into the first part of the journey and the second part of the journey. In our previous example, I did speak about the parts of our journey as the starting and ending of the journey because we spoke about him going and then later coming back. Now, here we're talking about a continuous journey. So when we're talking about something in continuous form, we can refer to it as the first part and the second part. I've made my list, so I can now start putting my information into my checklist. We have, for the first part of the journey, he traveled for 2 hours. So my time is 2 hours. And he traveled at an average speed of 80 kilometers per hour. For the second part of the journey, it was said to me he then traveled for another 3 hours at 70 kilometers per hour. So we have our time of 3 hours and we have our speed of 70 kilometers per hour. In both instances, I don't have a distance. Now, the reason you would have a first part and a second part, so what this basically means is when you're looking for an average speed, you want to know what is all the information for both parts so that you can then find the new distance for both of them and the time traveled together to find an average speed. The word average refers to the middle of multiple numbers. We also talk about it as the mean speed, so the middle number in a set of numbers. So what we will then be doing is first calculating the distance for each portion, and then later on we'll add our distance and time and then recalculate our average speed. So we want to first get a total before we separate it again. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to make my magic triangle on the side so that we know exactly what formula it is we need to be using. So we have distance, speed and time. Distance on the top, speed at the bottom and time at the bottom as well. I'm looking for my distance. So for the first part of the journey, I'm looking for the distance, right? And that means my formula is speed times time. My speed is 80 kilometers per hour and my time is 2 hours. 80 times 2 gives us 160 kilometers. For the second part of the journey, I'm using exactly the same formula because again I'm looking for my distance and I already have 2 pieces of the puzzle already there. I only need to find the third piece of the puzzle. For me to find the third piece of the puzzle, I would be saying speed times time to find the distance. So it is 70 times 3 gives us 210 kilometers. Now, if you were not too sure about what each of these were, on the side of your page, you would be doing some long multiplication to then find each of these answers. Once we get to this portion here, your next step is then we are going to add our distances and we will add our time separately. We can add our distance and time because we're traveling over one long distance and the time is continuous as well. If we were then looking for the average time, we would do separate calculations with using distance and speed and a separate calculation again for distance and speed. But because we're looking for average speed, we can add our distances and our times together. When we were there, if we were looking for something other than that, then we would be using a different, we would be doing different calculations and then later on add the 2 and divide it by 2. So what I'm saying will make a little bit more sense now. So we have our distance. So we're going to say total distance is equal to 160 plus 210. So 160 plus 210 gives us 370 kilometers. So now we have a total distance. Now we look for a total time. That is, we have 2 hours plus 3 hours gives us a total time of 5 hours. Now, because I have my total distance and I have my total time, I can use this information then to find an average speed. The average speed means I'm going to find the middle speed for the whole entire journey. So, average speed is equal to, now just because the word average is there, it doesn't mean we're going to use some new special formula. We're still looking for speed. That means I'm still going to use my normal formula, distance divided by time. So it is distance divided by time, or in long form, you would be writing d divided by time as such. 370 divided by 5. So on the side of your page, you can do the calculation. The number at the bottom always goes on the top, and the number at the bottom always goes on the outside, and the number at the top always goes on the inside. 5 cannot go into 3, but it goes into 37 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35, and we have 2 remainder. We bring down the next number. 5 goes into 20 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20, and we have no remainders. Our answer therefore is 74 kilometers per hour. So to do a quick sum up of how you would be answering more complex word problems is, the first thing is underline your keywords, as you would have seen in many of my examples I have done. Step number 2, make a checklist. Put your information that you have into what you are looking for and what you have. This then shows you what it is you need to still find and where you need to be going for that. Step number 3, make sure you're using the right formula based on what your checklist has told you. Whatever information is not there means that is what you are looking for. And then step number 4, which I haven't written here, is to simplify. Your simplifying would then be by adding, dividing, or multiplying, whatever the formula may need from you. If you have enjoyed this video, if you understood what was happening, please subscribe down below and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you.